Gary, if you can show them what we have first before we get started with any statements.
Yeah, this is the shorter one you just sent.
So at this point, what we're looking at is a confrontation, the action confrontation where the protesters are trying to force their way through the line. This is only about a minute, but this is after we've had dialogue and informed them that we are not going to allow the protesters to proceed across the Crescent City connection. At this point in time, they attempted to cross the Crescent City connection by force. This is going to conclude this video. Gary, can you show them the other video? What I want to show you on the other video, the purpose of this video was to show you the intent or the force in which the crowd chose to use to force their way through our line that was trying to protect them from the very beginning. Next, we're going to show you a video in which we actually had a dialogue with the informal leaders, because this is not necessarily an organized organization that called this protest. Nevertheless, we were able to identify informal leaders and develop a dialogue with them to try to hopefully deter this type of interaction from occurring. They were given an opportunity to use our mics, our resources to address the protesters as well. This is how much we have been working with them to ensure that they had an environment that was conducive to having a peaceful protest. And we have 3 or 4 individuals behind our lines. We're talking to them, engaging them, encouraging a peaceful protest, but we're letting them know this is as far as we can allow you to go. Can you put it on the 16-minute mark? On the 16-minute mark is where you're going to see where she's actually going to use the mic to talk to the crowd.
No, what you said? I want to hear it. What did you say? I'm not telling y'all to stand right there. Right, I feel y'all. I'm with y'all. I'm not against y'all. I'm not telling nobody to go home.
And that's our equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how far we rewinded this, but there's a point in which she clearly tell the crowd, they want me to tell you you cannot go any further, but I'm not going to tell you that.
Advance it a little bit.
It may be before that. I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure what point it is. But let's let it play out for a second.
I have to.
Because it may have been before this, just as soon as she grabbed the mic.
I think it was a little bit.
I'm not on this mic to tell y'all what to do and what not to do. And if people telling me to tell y'all to turn around, I'm not doing it.
There it is.
I'm not, listen, I'm okay with that, but I'm not gonna let y'all walk into some bullshit without telling y'all what they said. I'm going to.
Gary, you can fast forward because I don't want to keep them here too long with this. Go to the 19-minute mark. 19-minute mark.
Go backwards.
That's it.
I need to know, they ready to beat us, they ready to I took everything off.
At this point in time, this is after we've had this conversation with them. We've asked them to leave. She said what she had to say to the crowd. They refused to leave. They are now encouraging the men to step to the front, the women to step to the rear, the women to remove your jewelry and earrings, because now they are prepared for a confrontation because they would like to proceed through our lines with force. And what you're witnessing now is where they are actually formulating that plan to put the men at the front and the women to the rear.
Oh, man.
And this goes on for a few minutes, but I just wanted you to hear this and hear this plan. They're continuing to do this. They're continuing to create this environment that we have been totally against throughout this process. Gary, if you can proceed to this final clipping, which will be a 24-minute mark. At the 24-minute mark is where she's going to be towards the middle of the crowd, and the front of the crowd is trying to force their way through the line, at which time we are now deploying gas to disperse the crowd. And at this point in time, tear gas is deployed. And as you can see, her clipping, her Facebook Live went on for at least an hour and a half to 2 hours. So I think that's going to be enough, Gary. We'll be able to find this on the social media platforms as we have been able to do so ourselves. So we called you here this morning to give some clarity and some understanding as to what occurred during this unfortunate police protester encounter on the Crescent City connection, or better yet, on the Pontchartrain Expressway near the Chapatulas exit. I think we all agree that what has triggered this entire nation to the level in which we are right now, it was a murder that occurred. And there's no doubt about that. We agree the New Orleans Police Department has stood by the side of our community since last Friday, hand in hand, riding with them, walking with them, talking with you, to ensure a safe environment and platform that everyone can speak and exercise their constitutional rights. We do agree things could and should be better. Our relationships could and should be better, not just here in New Orleans, but nationwide with regards to the law enforcement community and the community in which we serve. But I stand here before you troubled. I stand here disheartened at the actions that we had last night. Just 2 days ago, I asked our entire city, standing before you with our community leaders, asking you to do not take the bait. And guess what? Unfortunately, some of our citizens did just that. They took the bait. We will not tolerate, we will not condone violent protests in the city of New Orleans. If we're telling you that this is as far as we can take you, if we have drawn that line through our actions, I think we have proven through our actions that we're willing to work with you. But if we've drawn that line, that means this is as far as we can go. Work with us. Do not let the agitators step in, take over your emotions, and escalate this to something that it should not be. We did not attack anyone. We did not deploy gas on a peaceful protest. We did deploy gas on individuals who chose to use force against our officers when they were simply trying to protect the lives of our citizens and anyone else who choose to exercise their constitutional rights. That line was formed with the purpose of safety and safety only. And as we stood there, on the videos you just witnessed yourself, we had established in dialogue with the informal leaders of this protest. They used our equipment to communicate with fellow protesters, but they then turned that against us. After being informed that they would not be allowed to cross the Crescent City connection, they chose to use force. They met together, established and formulated a plan, asking the men to step to the front, asking the women to step to the rear and remove your jewelry and your earrings, because they were planning to have a confrontation. They wanted to have a confrontation, and we, citizens of New Orleans, allowed them to bait us into that confrontation. They then attempted to force their way through our lines. And I'm proud of the men and women of the New Orleans Police Department, our state partners at the state troopers who stood there with us. And we stood our ground to make sure that no one was injured. Unfortunately, we had to deploy gas to disperse the crowd. Upon doing so, the crowd somewhat dispersed. We still had approximately 200 to 300 people still left up there with us. And a few of those 200 or 300 attempted to continue to break the line, resulting in the arrest of 5 individuals at the end of the night for crossing the police corridor. So video of last night's encounter is clearly shown on social media where the protesters were trying to break our line after several warnings to disperse this crowd. We have received some reports of individuals going to the hospital as a result of the tear gas. Our force investigation team is investigating as in what our protocol is with regards to use of force to this level. We would like to identify individuals who may have been affected by the tear gas in itself, but nevertheless, we were fortunate that no one was seriously injured. None of our officers were seriously injured. And we're asking you, the community, please work with us. We have been with you side by side from day one, and we'll continue to be with you side by side. But we must do this together. We're talking about making and effecting the change for this country and for the relationships of law enforcement in our community. You cannot affect change with violence. We cannot do this through violence. Let's work together and make this a peaceful city as it has always been. We have been the model of peaceful protests thus far. And we should maintain that. We just tainted our city last night. We have been the prime example, the shining beacon for the entire nation. We have been receiving phone calls throughout the week as to what is it that New Orleans is doing to keep it so peaceful. And we have just tarnished that. So people, please listen. Work with us. If we are saying do not do something, we're saying it for a reason. Safety first, and that's for everyone. At this time, I'll take any questions.
Travis?
Yeah, is there a protocol in place, or are these situations just fluid when you have to deploy tear gas like that? Is there a certain number of protesters that had to breach, or did you feel like your officers were in danger? Are there certain protocols you guys have to meet, or is it just a fluid situation out there?
So we have a certain protocol. There is no number or anything of that sort. Our commanding officers on scene would make that decision, but it starts with safety. It is all about safety. We would go through a protocol of informing or giving the verbal warnings to please comply to our orders. At some point in time, if you're not complying, we're going to have to identify a way to move forward. And through confrontation, that is a physical or fistic movement is one of our last resorts. But if our officers are being forced upon, which is what occurred last night, individuals forced themselves upon our officers by trying to push their shields against them and force their way through our lines. That is when the decision was made to deploy this tear gas.
Tasha?
First quick question, was the decision made by a commanding officer of the NOPD?
Absolutely.
Also, I know that there is another protest planned for today. Do you have concerns given what happened last night? And you know, are you doing anything differently tonight because of yesterday?
Well, of course we have concerns because it appears as though the behavior is escalating. I mean, we're looking at last night they were attempting to take over the Crescent City connection. Night before last, they took over the interstate. So we don't know what exactly it is that they're trying to do or what their next move will be. We will continue to operate as we have normally been doing. We would like to identify the leaders, be it formal or informal leaders, let them know that we are here to work with you, not against you. What is it that you need from us so that we can do it? But just because you walk towards us with your hands up in the air saying, hands up, don't shoot, and we have a line, doesn't mean we're going to just let you have at it. We have to protect this city. There should be decency and order. There should be law and order for civility in this city.
Were there plans to block interstate access last night, and are there plans to do that in the future at this point?
We always attempt to block any access to the interstates, given that, that is very dangerous. You're looking at the interstate with vehicles traveling at a high rate of speed. I truly don't understand who would want to go up there and put themselves in that position and stand in the middle of an interstate with those vehicles traveling as fast as they are. But definitely we like to try to prevent them from going up there, but things happen, and they happen very rapidly. So we do the best that we can with what we have.
Is that any plan going forward, though, to block interstate access to protesters at this
That's
point?
the plan. Every time we see a protest move, that has not started today. It did not start yesterday. Anytime there's a movement, there's some concern, and there's a plan to try to prevent that as much as possible, without impacting the rest of our citizens who are trying to get to and from wherever they're trying to go, who has nothing to do with the protests.
Do you know?
The 5 people who were arrested, there's been speculation that some of them were outsiders. Where are they from?
We have 3 from New Orleans and 2 from out of town. 1 from Belgium, and the other is from Massachusetts.
Ramon?
Just one question following up on Danny's. You said, I guess that it's always the goal to kind of block off access to the interstate.
Mhm.
Was there like a rush past any units that were kind of stationed at the bottom?
Absolutely, there's a rush. They, just as they did night before last on the interstate, they rushed past our vehicles, and you have that amount of people coming at you at one time. There's only so much that you could do to prevent them from moving.
In light of the COVID-19, sorry, go ahead.
No, and just
Yeah,
one
Ramon.
question. I know we're kind of, this is a tactical question, but I mean, was there a consideration to maybe further up or further like on the ramp to maybe confront them there and stop them there as opposed to letting them get as high? Just a lot of people were talking about.
It was a fluid situation. We adjusted accordingly, given the circumstances that we had. This was a very large crowd, 2,000 to 3,000 maybe. At some point you had some splinters, meaning that some of the crowd splintered off in different directions. So in splinting off, we have to try to keep up and identify what is the main group and which is the most threat to our city and our city infrastructure.
In light of the COVID-19 pandemic, if you could talk about, I guess, the ramifications of even having to use tear gas, because a lot of people, health experts have said that people, they started crying from their eyes, they were taking masks off, there was not much social distancing going on. Does COVID-19 play a role in the use of tear gas on a crowd like that?
I mean, at this point in time, I think that the onus should be put on the protesters as to what concern do you have about COVID-19 participating in large gatherings such as this. We should not have this large gathering from the beginning, given the conditions that we're in. So to think about should we or should we not use tear gas right now, my number one priority is the safety of our citizens and the safety of our officers. So if I have to use tear gas, I'm not thinking about COVID-19 being a deterrent or deciding factor as to whether or not I'm going to keep this city safe.
We've seen conflicting reports online about what was used. Was it just tear gas, or were there things like rubber bullets used? Because we are seeing some folks claiming things like rubber bullets were used.
Just tear gas. Just tear gas.
Ramon?
And just because another been brought up, I'm just going to ask you.
Not a
No
problem.
paintballs, no.
No.
nothing other.
If that happened, that came from the crowd. We, the New Orleans Police Department, use tear gas and tear gas only.
There is one kind of anecdote that's been presented to us repeatedly involving a woman who was hit in the back of the head with a canister. Can you say whether that was like unintentional from the firing, or if somebody picked up the canister and threw it? I mean,
Not sure. I'm not familiar with anyone being struck. If someone was struck, we would definitely like for them to contact our force investigation team, who is leading the investigation on this use of force. But we do know we did deploy one can by hand, meaning we rolled it on the ground, and another canister through a launch. So I'm not sure if anyone was struck. We have not been informed of such as of yet.
Video that shows the protester pick it up and kind of hurl it toward across the span. Is that something that's been?
So my officers, I was debriefed last night when I was up there on the bridge as well, and I was informed that once we launched our canisters, they were tossed back at us. that were tossed back at us.
Those two protesters that were from outside, were they planning this, or was this kind of, they were just here and they wanted to be a part of the protest?
I think they were, just wanting to be a part of the protest, but they did try to get through our lines. The main instigators, the main agitators, was not arrested, and this is what normally happens, and this is why I said earlier, do not take the bait, because the main agitators will go out in front and create this chaos. But once the chaos begins and the confrontation happens, they disappear. And it leaves our citizens in the middle of this who are really trying to just have a peaceful walk.
In
So,
light of what's going on around the country, is there any plan to use state police, SWAT teams, or National Guard units tonight or in the future for these kind of protests?
my state partners was with me last night, and they will be with me anytime that I call them. If I need them to be with me, yes, we will use them accordingly. They have stood side by side with us before. They were side by side with us last night, and if we need to use them again, we will. You do know that Troop N is right here in New Orleans. Troop B is in Kenner. So if we need them, they will be right there with us. It's just a phone call away. But we hope that we do not have to escalate to that. Again, I'm going to put the onus on our community. Do not let anyone entice you to escalate to that level. Let's do this together. Let's do this peacefully, and let's not let it stop now. After these protests are over, after this has died out, let's continue to have the conversation as to how we can better our relationships in serving our community. So I thank you again for being here. I hope that you are able to get the accurate information out, and we will do our due diligence in stand in front of that as well.